everyone. Welcome to Plus One to Gaming, the show about creating great gaming experiences. I'm Eric.
And I'm Chris. And welcome to our zero session. This is really exciting. In D&D and other tabletop games, zero sessions are a way for us to set the tone for the DM and as the players, and set those expectations about what the game's going to be about, what the setting's going to be, and I think it's also appropriate for launching a fledgling show to talk about what it is, what we're going to be doing here, and then also share what we have learned and what we use for zero sessions in D&D, and some things that we've picked up along the way to help out your games. What's this show about? Well, for a lot of folks, gaming isn't just a hobby. I know it isn't for us. It's a way for us to connect with friends, go on epic journeys, and tell great stories together. And we love nothing more than for our sessions to run smoothly. Plus One to Gaming is about all the little things that players and DMs can do to keep the focus on where it matters, the story that's being told together.
We've been playing games for a long time, and we know it can be overwhelming when you're just starting out. Even as a vet, you can become stagnant or lose your spark. If you're looking for ways to simplify your game, add more depth, or just try something new, you're in the right place. This show lets us dive into topics that we're excited about and share what we've learned to help boost your games. Each episode is an exploration of a topic or a theme with plus ones that you can use in your games. Yeah, so explain to me, I guess, what exactly a zero session is.
It's become one of my most favorite parts of the game. And I found it to be really effective, especially for new players, bringing new people in and being able to set the tone for the game. And it's a way for you as a DM to interview the players, find a way, find out what are their preferences. Different players are going to have different ways that they enjoy the game. Whether it's, hack and slash or intrigue and mystery or storytelling and role playing, all of those are valid. But as a DM, it's good to know what different personality types are at your table. Because then at that point, you're better equipped to, one, manage those personalities.
Yeah.
But also, make sure that each player is getting what what fulfills them from the game. And I think that's a really good DM knows what their players want and what they, what energizes them in the game.
Yeah.
And is skilled about dealing that out in a balanced way. So I think that's the biggest part of the session zero.
That's kind of session zero in a nutshell.
There's a really great Reddit post by a user, Hayes0, and it's an exhaustive list of every single thing you could cover in a session zero. And it brings up some really good points, like, are you going to set boundaries for your game? And that can be really important. Like, if you're a person who's maybe experienced, some kind of sexual trauma in your past, do you really want to be faced with a situation where that could be confronted with that in the game? Yeah. That could be very uncomfortable for somebody. Now, you don't know about that unless you talk about it. That's something that just never really occurs in our games, so it's nothing that we've ever had to discuss.
Yeah, we've never had to set that boundary because that boundary is kind of set by default with at least within our player group.
And also the things that you might allow each other to do to your to each other's characters in the game.
Is PvP allowed in your session?
Yeah,
because in a lot of them it's strictly not allowed. So inter-player conflict has to be fleshed out in a different way than I stab you.
Yeah, well, because we have disagreements in the game.
Yeah,
we have disagreements outside of the game.
Exactly. And oftentimes they will boil over.
Yeah,
the disagreements in the game will boil over to disagreements outside of the game.
But it's important to have that conversation. Like, if that does occur, how are you going to resolve that? Can I cast a spell on you and try and persuade you? How much agency does each person have over their character? That's important to talk about.
And I think it's important in the session zero to go over those types of rules so that if it does happen later on, you're not figuring it out on the fly.
Yeah.
Because then a player could maybe feel slighted if the rule comes down against them. Whereas if we made the rule at the session zero, we all know it going in. So it's not against one person. That's just the rule.
Yeah. there's so many things you could cover. It might be helpful if we talk about how to break some of that stuff down
Yeah.
into more manageable buckets. And I think by doing that's helpful because you can kind of filter out, the big stuff, make sure the important boxes are checked. And then if there's other things that you need to get into, you have that option. But really, I want to be able to share what's worked really well for me, kind of that 80-20 principle. And that may get people off to a good start.
What do you think in a zero session or in a session zero are the most important things to go over? Like, what are your buckets that you talked about?
Yeah, so the main things for me, especially if I'm bringing a group of people that I've never played with before or new players, the first thing is picking the setting and the rule set. Of course, we love D&D. But we also love other game systems. We've done Monster of the Week. We've done Folklore and some other types of games. So, like, what are you guys playing? Are you guys doing homebrew? Are you going to allow custom rules, custom classes, and races? Being able to understand what that is going to help. Like, well, now I can't play my favorite awakened cat wizard in this game because homebrew's not allowed.
Yeah.
It's good to know that ahead of time before I spend all this time, creating my character sheet.
Yeah. And that is, so those big things, what game are we playing? Are we playing Dungeons and Dragons? Are we playing Pathfinder? Are we playing Folklore? A lot of times those are going to be brought by the GM.
Yeah.
Because usually the GM already has a campaign that they want to run.
Yes.
Or are mostly prepared to run. But those other things can be kind of negotiated, right? Like the players can talk about, like, hey, like, I want to play this specific race. I know that that's not in this thing, but I think I can make it fit. Is that cool? You can have those conversations.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a one-way street of just the GM telling the players, this is what we're doing, this is what's allowed.
Yeah.
And this is how it's going to be at my table. No. And that's kind of the beauty of really these games in general. They are collaborative by nature. So even the zero session where you're figuring out what the game's going to be about and the feel and everything, that's collaborative also.
Yeah, and that's the biggest part. That's why I get so energized from these sessions, is because of that collaboration. Because at least my style of play is, I might have an idea of a campaign or, a theme or a setting. Because another thing to talk about, like, do you guys playing steampunk, cyberpunk? You guys traditional fantasy? Like, what's the world you want to play in? But then also just getting that input and being open to what the players want, because it's not just like me as the DM. It's not my game. I don't consider it my game. I'm a facilitator of the story, but the real stars of the show are the players. And so I want to make sure that the setting that we're building together and this experience that we're building together, I do want the players to have input. I want them to be really invested in the game. That to me, that's important. And then the impact is, the players have a much better time. They're more invested. The role playing that happens is just pure magic. It's wonderful. So
if we all know kind of the rule set, the area, the box that we're playing in, we're able to not have to worry about that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And you can focus on role playing and having fun. And that is, again, kind of the beauty of these session zeros, is they set the groundwork. Now, of course, we can always come back to them later. It doesn't necessarily mean that these things are like set in stone. But for a lot of groups, like you said, especially with new players, just to give them, I don't know, like a sense of what to expect. Because I know for me at least, I come into almost every game with a character I've already created.
Yeah.
But if we talked and you said, hey, I want to run a game, and I said, cool, I've got a character I want to play, and you said, actually, it's folklore, my blade lock doesn't really work anymore. So
yeah,
part of zero sessions that I really like, the part that I enjoy, I think maybe the most, is creating characters together with your team, with your group.
Yeah.
Which could be, because sometimes everybody might come wanting to play a rogue and you have 5 rogues.
Yeah.
And that can work. It can be really fun, but that might not necessarily be the type of game we want to play.
Yeah.
So I know it's hard for me to save creating a character for that session 0 because I enjoy doing it so much.
Yeah.
But I think it's really valuable to do that during this time.
Yeah.
Or at least start. You don't have to fill your entire character sheet out during this, but hey, I'm going to play a cleric, so you can play a barbarian because I know you've wanted to for a while.
Yeah.
Who's going to do, and if you want that type of style of like well-rounded party, that's really the time to do it. At least to figure out roles.
And it's come with a few ideas, have some backups. We all know how fun it is to make characters, and you get excited for a game and you've got this concept you've been working on. But to your point, I really advocate for holding off on the character creation process until you have the 0 session, because what I've just found anecdotally is, people come in with their characters maybe like somewhat fleshed out. They've got like a skeleton. But then after they hear the other interesting characters that are going to be in the party, in the game, they start like feeding off each other. Yeah. And then the characters start becoming more well-rounded because of each other. So, there's no, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way or best or worst approach. I'm just trying to give some different ways to tackle this. But I found the more you invite collaboration into the process, the more rewarding and the richer the experience becomes as an output. Yeah,
I agree. Like you said, with character creation and feeding off of each other, there's also, in a game that we're playing together, actually, I had a character already made in my mind based off of, a couple different fictional characters and kind of put an amalgamation of those. And we get to not even really a 0 session, because we've played so often together that we have kind of a truncated 0 session. We know where all of our boundaries are and things like that. So we don't have to go over those anymore because we're playing with the same group over and over again. So a lot of it is, what's the setting, what's the tone, what game style are we playing? Because we do like to experiment and play new game styles. So we're playing one that is cyberpunk in the not too distant future, and I had pre-made, as soon as because you're actually DMing that or GMing that, as soon as you said cyberpunk, I said, awesome, I've got this hard-boiled detective, ex-military, got some cybernetic implants, and had this character already created. And then when the other 2 guys come in, one of them is a talking ape and the other is a librarian robot, and I said immediately, like, okay, my guy's not going to fit in this group. So I had to adapt and make a new character that I thought would fit better with these other characters, with my teammates, basically.
Yeah. And the result of that was so great. Like, each one of those characters has stood out individually, but then also like as a party, the interactions between your guys' characters have been so compelling and so engaging. It's been like the best part for me as a DM, like when all of this stuff comes together, when you've invested this time into these 0 sessions, is when, as a DM, you can just sit back and do nothing for like 15 minutes while the players themselves are engaging with each other or, role playing or planning. Like, that to me is like, I'm doing my job. Yeah. And that in our truncated 0 session, what I had thought the world was going to be like shifted because of what the other characters thought the world was going to be like. And that is really cool. That's really beautiful, because we built, all 4 of us, including you, kind of built this world together in the 0 session. You came in with a framework and the story you wanted to tell. And then with just our characters and our backstories added to it and changed it slightly. And really they put our spin on it, which was really, really cool. Yeah. And I think that should continue in every session. The character should also build the world with the GM. Oh, absolutely. But in the 0 session, you can just add so much to it. Yeah. Well, you get, and this kind of goes on to the next point that I wanted to talk about. But before we move on to that, the end cap that I want to put on this is, a lot of time, and this is just my personal style, I generally prefer not to have the world itself that fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
And it's for the reason that you just said.
Yeah.
I want to build this world together. I don't want to feel like this is my creation that you guys are playing in. So a lot of times I have like the most important things, like where the story's taking place in the immediate, but hey, I want to explore. Like I'm looking for, a place where I can, score some weapons. Okay, well I didn't create an armory in this.
Yeah.
But I have, heuristics or shortcuts in my sort of DM toolkit where I can just conjure that. Yes, that it exists. And you have to balance that with, the situation and everything else. But, I absolutely love to build the world together, not create everything and hope you explore it all. Like it's kind of the load as you go approach.
Yeah. And that is not, obviously it's less work for you as a GM, but it is more fun also for the players to kind of, because we know, like, obviously we know this isn't like a fully fleshed out world. I'm, like you said, load as you go. I'm seeing what is loaded right now, and I can turn down this alley and we can figure out what's down there together.
Yeah. Because how many times,
and that's kind of cool.
How many times as a DM have we, created this whole, intricate either plot line or scenario, and you never get to experience it because the party turned right.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been burned by that so many times.
And you waste, and I want to say wasted time, because doing that stuff is enjoyable. It's fun to create those worlds in your downtime anyway. But freeing yourself from that allows you to focus more on the story, or focus more on twists, or kind of whatever whatever the the next thing is, because we're as players going to be unpredictable and not go the way you want us to go, and try to. We're going to try to make stuff up anyway and see what flies.
Yeah.
So if the GM is more loose with that, it can be much more fun. It's not us against, it's not the players against the GM. We're all working together to build this world.
And I think that's an important distinction to make. And we're going to, like, in a different episode, at a different time, we're going to go into, DMing, mentalities and approaches.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think it's a more rewarding experience if you view it as a collaborative, not, an adversarial.
Yeah.
But there are some game systems that are like that, and that's cool too.
Yeah, that can be fun.
And so you had mentioned something about, building the world together, and that kind of brings us to our next point, is getting player inputs, getting wish lists. I'd love to be able to see, like, how are people's characters going to be growing? What items do they want to accrue? Like, what treasures do they want to accrue on their adventures? That's not necessarily to say that they're going to get everything that they want, but it just helps me inform, or it helps become more informed about, like, these characters, how they want to how the player sees them growing over the game. Being able to have those interviews also gives you a better understanding of, like, what's your knowledge, what's your skill level, in terms of the game. Because I think that's important to know as well. As a DM in these zero sessions, as if you've been playing with people for a long time, you kind of know what their abilities are.
Yeah.
If you're rounding up a new group of players, or you're just all new players, you don't need to make the game super hard or overly complicated, or it doesn't have to be that way. So just understanding what players' abilities are, what their comfort level is. Some people just clam up with role playing. It makes them uncomfortable. They don't want to do voices. Push them appropriately, not too much. You want to encourage them to enjoy the game, but in the way that makes sense to them. And doing those interviews, getting that player input, getting their wish lists if they have any. It's just another step that I take to kind of get a better feeling of what the players are interested in.
And you're actually the only GM I've ever played with who's done that. Had me give a wish list, which felt, I don't know, it felt kind of weird as a player. Like, I don't know, the best stuff.
Yeah.
Can I get a +3 sword as a level 5, please?
I don't know. I think it's cool if there's something that maybe you've been questing for, or something that would just make your character really cool. I'm about letting you have it, not without some
Yeah,
jumping
yeah.
through some hoops, but I try to keep that in mind, like what's gonna help this player enjoy their character and the world that we're
Mhm.
creating. And again, it's like a Christmas list. If I don't know
Yeah.
if I don't know what you want,
Yeah.
you're gonna get
You're
something you
getting
might not be
socks.
happy with it. Yeah,
Yeah. But it was interesting because it made me think like, okay, what would my character want? Not what do I want for them.
yeah,
So it put me in their headspace and trying to think like, what would this character be after? Knowing that, they live in this world where magical items exist and they're aware of that. What kind of thing would they want to augment their strengths or weaknesses or whatever? And not just me wanting, a flying carpet or whatever it is.
yeah. Or maybe it's a relic from like a family heirloom that's been stolen,
Yeah.
and it's your
Yeah, it
character's
doesn't-
quest to retrieve it. Like, you know what? We'll make a story out of that for your character.
Yeah. Yeah, like it doesn't necessarily have to be a magic item, from the player's handbook or from the dungeon master's guide.
Yeah.
It could be, like you said, just an heirloom or a deed to property or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. And then, at that point too, like creating the characters, backstories, party dynamics, that's the next sort of big step that I like to take. We talked about it a bit, but I think having that party dynamic is really important to establish. I know we've both kind of lamented on our first experience of the Lost Mines of Phandelver because of disjointed party dynamics.
Yes.
The game was complicated, maybe more so than it needed to be. And we were much younger players back then, but having some conversations about that ahead of time might have, resolved some of those issues.
Yeah, so, and this would be something I think that a GM would present and the players would talk about something along the lines of like alignment.
Yeah.
No evil alignment, or are we going to play an evil campaign, or different things like that, because we had, and I've seen this several times, half of the group lawful or good and half of the group evil or chaotic, and it just, either of those playstyles can be really fun, but they are very hard to work together in a party, especially we had kind of a big party in that game,
Yeah.
and they just pull in opposite directions, and it kind of slows down the pace of the game. And it really is, I think, at least, can be a hindrance. Of course, there's a lot of room for role play if you have, a lawful good paladin and a chaotic neutral or evil, even warlock or whatever it is. Like, you can have a lot of good role playing possibilities out of that if their goals are the same.
Yeah, I think you hit the key point there. Like, what if that's the case? If you have the lawful good paladin traveling with the chaotic evil tiefling warlock from Hellspawn, why are they traveling together? You better have a very good reason to answer that question, because then what's stopping one from smiting the other,
or even just kicking out of the group? Like if we go into a shop and I'm trying to buy a water skin and you rob the clerk, we're not hanging out anymore.
Yeah.
You're out of the group. Get out of here. So what binds them together? And that can be really complicated. It's way easier to just have similar alignments.
Exactly. Because again, like it can cause some the friction it can cause in the game. I mean, sometimes it can be challenging to keep those feelings separate from the personal relationships that are happening.
Because you're stopping me from doing something I want to do, even if it is on imaginary paper, or real paper, but an imaginary space.
Yeah. So
if
then
I want to stab somebody and the paladin stops me, that boils up my blood. That makes me mad. You are preventing me from doing something I want to do. So in a session 0, what I have done since that campaign is talk about why are we a group? What, like, not only like, oh, we all met in an inn and we answered a help wanted ad or something like that, because that's loose, which again can be fun, but I find that like binding your party together and having a common goal just takes away so much frustration. So not only why are we together, but also what alignments are we doing? If somebody wants to be evil, why? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And maybe we run an evil. If I come as a GM and wanting to run the starter set, and every one of my players is like, I wanted to make an evil whatever. Like, okay, then we need to play a different game.
Well, or just
Like,
take
it's
an
a
evil
different game
spin.
that I thought we were going to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Or
do
an
an
evil
evil
spin
campaign
on
and
the-
have fun.
I think, yeah, you hit all the key points. Like, if you're going to have that type of situation, at least have a mechanism to resolve those interplayer conflicts.
Yeah.
If you suspect that they're going to be a factor in your game, if you don't want to take the approach of no evil alignments or no chaos,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Going to the construction of the party and the creating the backstory of the group itself. You've got your individual characters and you've worked through those together, but how did that party come together? The one game that I played with some friends at work, both two players were playing halflings and they just decided, hey, we're from the same village. We grew up together. And then they had, like, in combat, they would talk about old lessons from Old Nan Tabernacle, used to say.
Yeah.
And they'd have these little quips that would happen just organically from this bond that they created. It was awesome. And it happened completely organically.
Yeah.
But it helped bring the party together.
Yeah. And part of that, because I know we as GMs and as players, as GMs especially, you need a reason for your players to be together.
Yeah.
Like the meeting at an inn is just it's too weak a bond, but it's also been done 100 times.
Yeah.
So you need a reason for them, a hook really, but a hook that is going to hook all of them. If one of your characters doesn't care about the hook, they're going to be off doing whatever they want to do. So that in a zero session or in a session zero, you figure out also what are these characters' motivations, what alignment are they, so what kind of hook is going to work to get all of them.
Yeah. Because they need to be connected. They need to be bonded somehow. And
Yes.
and thinking about how the party works together as a team, it just creates such a collaborative experience. And you guys are there to bolster and support and elevate each other as you go out and quest and adventure and have these great experiences. So I think it's very beneficial for players and groups to have these sessions and talk about that. And even if you're not creating an origin story for your party itself, at least have a good understanding of why you're together and what's holding you, at the very least, accountable to one another.
Yeah. And we've come up with even like we all went to basically the Adventurers Unemployment Office and got put together as a party, and then they gave us this job.
Yeah.
So like
you're like the outcasts.
It's flimsy, but it worked.
Yeah.
And because we as players know that being committed to each other makes the game run smoother and be more fun, we're willing to be like, okay, that's all right. That's how we became a group. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be this huge backstory.
Right.
It could be silly. It could be fun. You could meet at an inn and just all figure out that, like, hey, we all hate this one same dude for different reasons. Let's
all
go
hate them
beat him
equally.
up. Yeah, whatever it is. But you need to be on the same page, and you all need to be committed to the mission and the group. Because if you're not, why are you there? Why are we going to have you in this group if you're just a liability?
I mean, if there's one thing that I could say that would help just streamline the group dynamic, that would be it. Just talk about that. Have a conversation.
Yeah.
It's
And
fun.
every time that we've run into problems, it's because we didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have a zero session. 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Every one of the problems we've had could have been fixed with having one of these conversations before we actually play.
Learn from our mistakes, folks.
Yeah. Which is tough, though, because I know when we kind of first really got into playing role-playing games, tabletop games, I didn't want to talk about playing it anymore. I wanted to play.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes you just by chance have everybody together.
Right.
So like, oh, we're going to play. So the tendency is to not want to waste that time on a session zero when you could be in session one.
Right.
And start your adventure.
Yeah. See, I'm
But
also
you're just so valuable.
I at this point in my gaming career, I don't know if that's what you would call it.
Yeah.
I won't start a game without some kind of zero session, even if it's like the truncated version or the streamlined version that we do for our games.
So let's talk about what we do now.
Yeah.
Because I guess the way that we've talked about it so far, and the way that I envision it a lot of times, is just like your first session. You sit around a table with all your buds, and you talk about what campaign you're running, what the vibe is. Like we talked about boundaries, alignment, all that kind of stuff, and around a table. But we've been playing together for 10 years.
Yeah,
So
if not longer.
we know the boundaries. We know all that stuff already. So we don't have to go over it again. And even alignment, we've kind of got that fixed. Even
We've worked
without
the
like
kinks out.
specifically saying, specifically saying you can't be a chaotic evil person.
Yeah.
Because you're harshing my vibe. So a lot of times, and we also now are all remote.
Yeah.
We're
Thanks
all
to
over the country.
various reasons, pandemic and separation of distance, and
Yeah. I mean, we're in 4 states, easily 3 different time zones. We're all over the country. So we don't really have the luxury of sitting around a table anymore and doing these 0 sessions. So a lot of times what we do is, and if you're remote, even if you're not remote and you can't get your group together as often as you would like, you can do these session 0s virtually. Just to give a little like peek behind the curtain, if Chris is making a game, he will make a group in Facebook. Tell us, he'll write like a little backstory or a little spiel about this is the world, this is the campaign, this is the rule set, what kind of characters do you want? And then I'll post my character, and the other players will post their characters, and we'll comment under them. And it's just an easy way. I can do that while I'm at work. I can do it on my phone while I'm at the store or whatever.
yeah, it's passive.
And it's passive, and it allows all of us to do it at our own pace. Let's say we're going to play on Sunday. Let's get all this banged out before Sunday. But also for me now, like, it really gets me excited about the game.
Me too.
It's like a slow burn.
Yeah.
Like every time I get a notification, like, ooh, somebody else said something in the group. And
A little dopamine hit.
Yeah, in the new group, what are we talking about? Oh, you want to use a crowbar as a weapon? Cool. Whatever it is.
And seeing like when you start seeing like the character sheets popping up, and you're like, okay, what did Eric come up with this time?
Yes,
That's so much fun.
That really is the most exciting because, like I said, in a normal session 0, you don't have to do your full character sheet. Now, if you're a brand new player, and if you're a GM with a brand new player, you may want to help them out with their character sheet in this session because they can be confusing. And we're going to do a whole series on understanding the character sheet and things like that. But for new players, they're mystifying. I still have stuff that I'm like, wait, how do I get through this? What's my passive perception? And I've been playing for a long time. But there's still things in there that are confusing. So for a new player, yeah, you might want to help them. But for most of us, you don't have to do it at the 0 session. You don't have to take up people's time filling out stats and rolling or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's super, super fun the way we do it remotely in Facebook groups or whatever, Google Docs, whatever you guys want to do, to see those character sheets drop. And it's like a reveal. It's really, really fun.
Yeah.
So a lot of times that's how we will do it. Again, knowing all of the basics, we don't have to talk about it. And if there's something that one of us wanted to do that's different from the norm, we usually run lawfully good, aligned-ish campaigns. If I wanted to run an evil campaign, I'm going to make sure I say it in the description. Make evil characters. This is an evil campaign. That being an evil campaign doesn't necessarily mean we're going to cross those other boundaries that we have already set. Just our characters are, going to have different motivations, basically, and they're going to get to those motivations differently than a lawful paladin would.
Doing things the way we do remotely, like when we switch to a new game system, for example, it's nice to be able to help each other out with, new character sheet, like how do you get to this, or I can for the Cyberpunk game that we're playing, it's based on the Folklore rule set, which is a very lightweight rule set, so it was new to all of us. We were trying something different. I'm able to look at your guys' character sheets before we play and make sure that that your characters are built in a way that's going to be appropriate for the game setting. Because it's just something completely new how they deal with things. So it's good to be able to do that review session. Like you said, if you have new players or a new system, things are unfamiliar, it gives you a chance to do that.
For new players or new systems and different things, you may need to hop on Discord and talk some things through.
Yeah.
But if you're familiar with the system, if you're familiar with the players, the session zeros can be very quick, but it's still better than banging this stuff out in the first session or the 10th session.
Yeah.
You don't want to leave this time bomb for yourself later on. It's just going to create so much more of a headache that you could have dealt with in the beginning before we even started.
Yeah. And as you're fleshing out the game setting, the rules that you're playing, you're bringing all these people together. One other thing to think about is, well, are you guys playing just a one shot, and these characters, are gonna, and this whole thing's gonna be over after the adventure's over? Are you going to be playing a continuing adventure?
Yes.
What's the consistency? You're gonna try and do weekly. And then there's table etiquette rules too, like maybe no cell phones. Are you going to allow people to smoke and drink and snack and other things?
And when you're laying out what campaign you're running, let people know this is a long campaign. It's going to be from 1 to 5 or 5 to 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or this is a one shot. Let's figure this thing out. We'll have fun. You can make throwaway characters, kind of whatever it is. Or you could use characters from previous games we played. Let them know kind of what their parameters are.
And in terms of, other rules or just things to get out of the way before you really start playing the campaign. I was playing with some friends from work, and we had a great table. It was good role playing, but we would spend nearly an hour just getting ready to play.
Yeah.
And that's time
that's tough.
Especially like we were playing after work, so it's just setting that bound. That's when we talk about boundaries, like what is a tangible example of a boundary? Yeah. There's one, like how much side talk are you going to allow at the game? Like how much are you going to allow players to deviate? Because we all have got our lives and other things going on. We're here to do this thing together. So it's also good to be respectful of that too.
Yeah, and even just having that conversation, almost exactly the way you said it, like with your table. We're here to play this together. Let's be respectful of each other's time. So at my table, no cell phones. Please, pay attention while somebody else's turn is in combat, because that might affect what you were going to do. And that way, when it comes to you, you're not like, and wasting time that wouldn't have been wasted if you were paying attention.
Yeah. Or like you missed a bit of dialogue or something.
Yeah, and that happens with if that happens with every single player, the game is just going to drag. But if we all are there, excited to play, respect everyone else's time, it's so much more enjoyable. It's so much smoother. But talking about what respecting, like you said, the boundaries, what do these boundaries look like beyond time? No cell phones. Keep crosstalk to a minimum. Like, we're here to have fun. Let's joke around and different things like that. But you got to walk that line of like, are you taking away from the experience or are you adding to it?
Yeah. And
again, we don't really have to go over this that much with our group because we're so comfortable with each other. And we play remote, so I can't check if you're on your cell phone. But it's a good rule to set at the beginning. Yeah. That way, again, if you're in session 3 and somebody's habitually on their phone and you have to tell them, hey, bro, get off your phone, there's no hurt feelings because you already had that. You already had that rule set. Yeah. And everyone agrees on it is a more important thing. It's also not just the GM again saying you guys can't have your phones.
Yeah, that's why you have that at the zero session together. Like you're all collaboratively buying in and agreeing. You're signing a pact in blood. To
at least at our table.
Things. Yeah, I don't know about yours, but you should be signing things in blood.
You should be. But yeah, that you get the buy-in from everybody at the table for all of the rules.
Yeah.
If there is one person who's not comfortable with one of the rules, we have to rediscuss. Yeah. It's an all or nothing, part of the session 0.
Yeah.
So if one person doesn't want this, let's talk about why. And that person might be able to convince all of us into their opinion, or vice versa.
But if
you're setting hard rules, if you're setting hard boundaries, if you're setting hard whatever, everybody needs to buy it.
Yeah, and that's probably even more true for remote play, where you're losing another dimension in the experience.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a few different ways to approach these session zeros: picking the setting, the rule set, interviewing your players, getting their backstory, their history, their wish lists, understanding the players themselves, their ability level, their experience with the games, talking about the party dynamics and the backgrounds, alignments, and setting any boundaries. So what we want to do is take some of the things that we've discussed on the show today and encapsulate them into a nice little PDF checklist that you can use for your games, for your zero sessions, to kind of help stay organized, cover the big things that are going to be important for your games, and then help you if you decide if you need to dive in on any deeper, more specific kind of in the weeds topics. If you're interested in that, check in the show notes below for the link. That's all for us today. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on our website, +1togaming.com. And also subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way in supporting the show, and click the notification bell to get the updates for the new releases. Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you soon.